They say history is written by the victors. But what happens when victory itself is purchased? When genius is commodified? When brilliance becomes a transaction? When a name carved into eternity was never meant to be there at all? For 3 centuries, every calculus student who ever lived has spoken his name. L'Hôpital's rule, the elegant solution to the impossible problem, the mathematical miracle that transforms chaos into clarity. We revered him. We memorized him. We built monuments of thought in his honor, but we were worshiping a lie. This is the story of the greatest heist in mathematical history, a tale of ambition and betrayal, of poverty and privilege, of a friendship that should have changed everything, but instead changed nothing at all. This is the story of how one man's name became immortal, and by erasing another man's existence. Welcome to Numbers and Narratives by Blesswright, where we don't just tell you the mathematics, we reveal the humanity behind the equations, the blood behind the theorems, the tears behind the truth. If you're ready to see the beautiful, terrible reality of how mathematics is really made, hit that subscribe button right now. Ring the notification bell because the stories we uncover here don't just challenge what you know about math, they challenge what you know about ambition, about justice, about the price we pay for glory. And if this story moves you the way it moved me, leave a comment below. Tell me, can genius stolen still be called genius? Can truth delayed still be called truth? Now let me take you back to the glittering salons of Paris, us to the smoky cafes where ideas were currency and reputation was everything. Back to 1661, to the birth of a boy who would become a legend, not through his own genius, but through his ability to recognize it, to capture it, to claim it as his own. Guillaume François Antoine, Marquis de l'Hôpital, entered this world wrapped in silk and privilege. Born into one of France's most distinguished noble families, he possessed everything a man could desire. Wealth that seemed infinite, connections that opened every door, a title that commanded instant respect. His father was a lieutenant general, a man of power and prestige. His mother, a noblewoman whose lineage traced back through centuries of French aristocracy. But Guillaume wanted more. From his earliest years, he was different from other noble children. And while they played at war and politics, Guillaume played with numbers. While they studied the art of courtly conversation, he studied the language of the infinite. Mathematics called to him with a voice that drowned out all the glittering distractions of aristocratic life. It whispered to him in the quiet moments, sang to him in his dreams, possessed him with a fever that no physician could cure. His family was horrified. Mathematics? That was the domain of craftsmen and engineers, of lowly tutors and provincial scholars. A marquis did not dirty his hands with equations. A nobleman of his standing should be pursuing military glory, political influence, advantageous marriages, not scribbling symbols on paper like some obsessed clerk. But Guillaume de l'Hôpital was not interested in what he should do. He was consumed by what he must do. Mathematics wasn't just an interest, it was an obsession that burned in his chest like a holy fire. He would study through the night until his candles guttered and died. He would fill page after page with calculations, his hand cramping, his eyes straining in the dim light, his mind alive with ecstasy. There was just one problem, one terrible, unavoidable truth that Guillaume could never quite escape, no matter how many hours he devoted to his studies, no matter how desperately he pursued mathematical enlightenment. He was good, but he was not great. He could understand the work of others. He could follow the proofs, grasp the concepts, appreciate the elegance. But that spark of true genius, that divine fire that allows a mathematician to see beyond the known into the infinite unknown, that he did not possess. When he stood at the gates of mathematical immortality, and he could not find the key to unlock them. Can you imagine that torture? To love something so completely, so absolutely, that it becomes the very center of your existence. And to know deep in your soul that you will never truly master it. To hunger for greatness and find yourself capable only of competence. To dream of immortality and wake each morning to the suffocating reality of your own limitations. This was Guillaume's private hell, and it made him dangerous. By the time he reached his 20s, Guillaume had become a fixture in the mathematical circles of Paris. His wealth bought him access to the greatest minds of his age. His charm made him welcome. His genuine passion for mathematics made him tolerated. They needed his money for their experiments. They enjoyed his hospitality. They appreciated his enthusiasm, but they did not respect him as an equal. He was the wealthy patron, the aristocratic dilettante, the nobleman playing at mathematics. Useful, certainly. Pleasant enough, but not one of them. Never one of them. Then in 1691, Guillaume's life changed forever. Because in 1691, he met Johann Bernoulli. Picture this moment. A salon in Paris, candles casting dancing shadows on the walls, the air thick with wine and ideas. And into this room walks a young man of 24, blazing with an intensity that makes everyone else seem half asleep. Johann Bernoulli, one of the most brilliant mathematical minds ever to draw breath, crackling with genius like a lightning storm given human form. The Bernoulli family was already becoming legendary in mathematical circles. Jacob Bernoulli, Johann's older brother, was making groundbreaking discoveries. But Johann was something else entirely. Where Jacob was methodical, Johann was inspired. Where Jacob built carefully, Johann soared recklessly. Johann Bernoulli didn't just do mathematics. He breathed it, lived it, radiated it from every pore. And he was desperately, crushingly poor. Do you see it now? Do you see the terrible symmetry of this meeting? Guillaume, drowning in wealth but starving for genius. Johann, drowning in genius but starving for survival. Two men, each possessing exactly what the other needed. Two men standing at a crossroads that would determine not just their own fates, but the course of mathematical history. They recognized each other immediately. Not as equals, they could never be equals, but as necessary complements. Guillaume saw in Johann the brilliance he could never possess. Johann saw in Guillaume the resources he could never access. It was not friendship. Not really. It was something far more complex, far more fraught with danger. It was opportunity. Guillaume made his offer. He needed a private tutor, someone who could guide him through the new mathematics that was exploding across Europe. This calculus, this revolutionary new way of understanding change and motion, infinity and infinitesimals. Guillaume wanted to master it, and he was willing to pay handsomely for instruction. But Johann, brilliant Johann, saw an opportunity for something more. He didn't just want to teach Guillaume. He wanted to secure his own future. And so they struck a bargain that would echo through the centuries. Guillaume would pay Johann a generous salary, a fortune by the standards of a struggling mathematician. In exchange, Johann would tutor Guillaume in the mysteries of calculus. But there was more. There was always more. Johann would share his discoveries with Guillaume. His latest work, his newest insights, his most brilliant innovations, all of it would flow to Guillaume, to use as he saw fit. And here's the poison pill, the clause that would corrupt everything. Johann agreed not to publish his own discoveries for as long as Guillaume wanted them kept secret. Can you imagine signing such a contract? Agreeing to silence your own genius? To cage your own brilliance for money? It seems insane. But Johann Bernoulli was not insane. He was desperate. He had a family to feed. He had a career to build. And he believed, oh, how tragically he believed, that this arrangement would be temporary. A year, maybe two. Just until he secured a proper academic position. Just until his circumstances improved. He had no idea he was signing away his immortality. The tutorials began. Guillaume was a devoted student, attentive and eager. Johann was a brilliant teacher, patient and thorough. And slowly, inexorably, the knowledge flowed from Johann's mind into Guillaume's notebooks. Theorem after theorem, technique after technique, the secrets of differentiation, the mysteries of integration, the elegant solutions to problems that had baffled mathematicians for generations. Johann was creating a masterwork, but it was Guillaume's name that would be written on the title page, because Guillaume had a plan, a beautiful or terrible plan that had been forming in his mind since that first meeting. He would write a textbook, the first comprehensive textbook on differential calculus, a book that would organize all this new knowledge, make it accessible, transform calculus from an esoteric mystery into a practical tool. A book that would make its author immortal. And Johann? Johann was helping him do it, enthusiastically, brilliantly, completely unaware that he was architecting his own erasure from history, Through 1692 and 1693, the work continued. Guillaume's notebooks filled with Johann's insights. The structure of the great textbook took shape, and Johann kept discovering, kept creating, kept pouring his genius into this project that bore another man's name. He discovered the rule, the one that would become famous, sure the one that would be taught to millions of students across 3 centuries. The elegant method for evaluating indeterminate forms, for finding the limit when both numerator and denominator approach 0. A technique of stunning simplicity and breathtaking power. L'Hôpital's rule. Except it wasn't. It was never L'Hôpital's rule. It was Bernoulli's rule. Johann Bernoulli's rule. But Guillaume took it. Carefully, meticulously, he copied it into his manuscript. He understood it. Johann had taught him well. He could explain it, even prove it, but he hadn't discovered it. The flash of insight, the moment of creation, the divine inspiration, that belonged to Johann. And Guillaume took it anyway. In 1696, the book appeared. Une analyse des infiniment petits pour l'intelligence des lignes courbes, analysis of the infinitely small for the understanding of curved lines. The first calculus textbook, clear, comprehensive, accessible, an instant sensation that spread across Europe like wildfire. Guillaume François Antoine, Marquis de l'Hôpital, became famous overnight, celebrated, revered, his name on everyone's lips. The man who brought order to chaos, who made the infinite comprehensible, who gave the world calculus. And in the acknowledgments, buried deep in the preliminary pages, where few would notice and fewer would remember, a single sentence. Thanks to the Bernoulli brothers for sharing some of their insights. Some of their insights, Johann Bernoulli read those words and something inside him must have died. He had taught Guillaume everything. Attaboy, he had shared his most precious discoveries. He had, in essence, ghost-written the book that was making Guillaume immortal. And he received a single sentence of generic thanks, lumped together with his brother, his brilliant but separate brother, as if their contributions were interchangeable, forgettable, minor. But the contract, the damned contract. Johann had agreed to this. He had silenced himself for money, and now he was watching another man claim glory that should have been his. What did he feel in that moment? Rage, despair, betrayal, or something worse? The crushing realization that he had betrayed himself, that he had traded his birthright for a bowl of porridge, that he had made a bargain with the devil and the devil had delivered exactly what was promised? Johann was too proud to beg, too brilliant to be ignored forever. Yet he waited. He published his own work under his own name, building his own reputation stone by bitter stone. He became a professor at Groningen, then at Basel. He continued to make revolutionary discoveries. He feuded with his brother Jakob, competed with Newton and Leibniz, shaped the development of calculus for decades. But that rule, that damned rule, it would always be called L'Hôpital's rule. Guillaume, meanwhile, enjoyed his fame. He corresponded with the greatest minds of Europe. He was elected to the Royal Academy of Sciences. He was recognized as one of the founders of modern mathematics. Not the founder, he wasn't foolish enough to claim that, but a founder, a significant figure, a name that would echo through history. He knew the truth. Of course he knew. He lived with it every day, and I carried it like a secret stone in his chest. But he also knew that the world didn't care about truth as much as it cared about narrative. And the narrative said that the Marquis de l'Hôpital had written the first calculus textbook. The narrative said that L'Hôpital's rule was L'Hôpital's discovery. Who would challenge a marquis? Who would believe a struggling mathematician over a noble author? Who would care about the technicalities of a private tutoring arrangement when the book itself was so brilliant, so useful, so universally celebrated? Guillaume lived with his stolen glory for 8 years. 8 years of fame, of recognition, of mathematical immortality purchased at the price of another man's silence. And then, in 1704, at the age of 43, Guillaume François Antoine, Marquis de l'Hôpital, died. You might think this is where Johann's vindication begins, where truth emerges from shadow, where justice is finally served. You would be wrong, because Guillaume's book had become canonical. It was the textbook on calculus. Universities across Europe used it. Students memorized from it. Mathematicians referenced it. L'Hôpital's name was etched into the foundation of modern mathematics, carved so deep that no amount of truth could erase it. Johann tried. Oh, how he tried. He began to tell people the true story. He explained the tutoring arrangement, the contract, the actual authorship of the discoveries. He wrote letters, gave lectures, published papers making clear that the work attributed to L'Hôpital was actually his own. Some believed him, most didn't. Many simply didn't care. Because here's the terrible truth about history. It doesn't matter who's right, it matters who's believed. And Guillaume had the advantage of being noble, being first, being dead. The dead make excellent heroes. They don't contradict you. They don't complicate the narrative. They just lie there in their graves while their legends grow. Johann Bernoulli lived for 44 more years after Guillaume's death. 44 years of brilliant discoveries, of founding a mathematical dynasty. His sons Daniel and Nicholas would become great mathematicians themselves. 44 years of achievement and recognition and respect. But he never escaped Guillaume's shadow. That rule, that damned rule, would always bear the wrong name. The evidence of Johann's authorship accumulated slowly. His correspondence, his papers, even the testimony of other mathematicians who knew the truth. Historians began to piece together the real story. By the 19th century, most serious scholars knew that Johann Bernoulli was the true discoverer of L'Hôpital's rule. But the name stuck. It's still sticking today. We still teach L'Hôpital's rule in calculus classes around the world. We still speak Guillaume's name every time we evaluate an indeterminate form. We still grant him a kind of immortality he purchased but did not earn. It wasn't until 1955, 251 years after Guillaume's death, that the final proof emerged. A scholar discovered the complete correspondence between Guillaume and Johann, including the original contract, the terms of their arrangement, everything. The documentation was absolute, irrefutable. Johann Bernoulli had created the work. Guillaume de L'Hôpital had claimed it. History has known the truth for 70 years now, and we still call it L'Hôpital's rule. Why? Why do we allow this injustice to persist? Is it just inertia, the weight of tradition, the difficulty of changing terminology that's been used for centuries? Or is it something darker? Some unconscious recognition that genius without resources is powerless, that brilliance without privilege is disposable, that truth without the right connections is just noise? Think about Johann in those final years, an old man looking back on a life of extraordinary achievement. He had revolutionized mathematics. He had trained a generation of brilliant students. He had built a legacy that would extend through his children and grandchildren, a dynasty of genius. But when students learned calculus, they spoke Guillaume's name, not his. Can you imagine that pain? To know that your greatest insight, your most elegant discovery, has been permanently attributed to someone else? To watch year after year as generations of mathematicians credit your work to the man who bought it from you? To understand that you made this possible, that you signed the contract, that you silenced yourself for money you desperately needed? It's not a simple story of victim and villain. It's worse than that. It's a story of two men caught in a system that valued wealth and title over genius and truth. Guillaume was not an evil man. He was an ambitious man with resources and limited talent. Johann was not a pure victim. He was a brilliant man who made a calculated decision that turned out to be catastrophic. They needed each other. They used each other. And in the end, one of them won immortality while the other won, what? Justice in the footnotes of history? Recognition from specialists? The bitter satisfaction of being right while remaining forgotten? This is the real story of L'Hôpital's rule. Not a story of a brilliant discovery, but a story of a brilliant transaction. Not a tale of mathematical genius, but a tale of mathematical commerce. Not inspiration, but appropriation. Guillaume de L'Hôpital didn't steal Johann Bernoulli's work in the traditional sense. He bought it, fair and square, according to the terms of a contract both men signed. It was legal, it was even in its twisted way, honest. Johann agreed to be silenced. Guillaume agreed to pay. But legal doesn't mean just, and honest doesn't mean right. Every time you use L'Hôpital's rule, you're participating in this theft. Every time you teach it, you're perpetuating this injustice. Every time you write that name, You're choosing Guillaume's wealth and privilege over Johann's genius and truth. What do we do with this knowledge? Do we try to change the name, fight against centuries of tradition to call it Bernoulli's rule? Do we simply acknowledge the truth while accepting that the name will never change? Do we tell our students this story, let them grapple with the complicated ethics of mathematical history, or do we just move on, shrug our shoulders, accept that history is messy and justice is rare, and keep teaching L'Hopital's rule without bothering to mention that L'Hopital didn't actually discover it? I don't have an answer. I don't think there is a good answer. But I know this. Guillaume de l'Hôpital lies in his grave, 3 centuries dead, his name still spoken in classrooms around the world. Johann Bernoulli lies in his grave, equally dead, his name known only to specialists and historians who care enough to dig for truth. And every calculus student who ever learns to evaluate an indeterminate form speaks the wrong man's name and never knows it. That's not just historical injustice. That's ongoing injustice, active injustice. Injustice we participate in every single day. The question is, does it matter? Does it matter that genius can be bought and sold? Does it matter that privilege can purchase immortality? Does it matter that the name we revere isn't the mind we should honor? I think it matters. I think it matters desperately, because if we don't care who really discovered what, and if we don't care about crediting the right minds with the right insights, then we're saying that mathematics is just another commodity. That truth is fungible. That genius is for sale to the highest bidder. And if that's true, then what's the point? Why does any of it matter? Why should anyone strive for discovery if discovery can be purchased by someone with better connections? Why should anyone seek truth if truth can be claimed by someone with more resources? Guillaume de l'Hôpital's real legacy isn't a rule about limits. It's a lesson about power, about how the systems we build determine which names get remembered and which get forgotten, about how injustice, once embedded in our institutions and our language, becomes almost impossible to dislodge. He wanted to be immortal. He succeeded. But his immortality is built on a foundation of another man's silenced genius. His fame is a monument to everything wrong with how we recognize and reward human achievement. And we keep building that monument higher. Every time we teach L'Hopital's rule, every time we speak his name, every time we choose convenience over justice, tradition over truth. 300 years later, Guillaume de l'Hôpital is still stealing Johann Bernoulli's immortality, and we're helping him do it. So what do you think? Can stolen genius still be called genius? Can purchased immortality still be called achievement? And what are we going to do about the fact that we're all complicit in this centuries-old theft? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about this. And if this story challenged you, if it made you think about mathematics and history and justice in a new way, then subscribe to Numbers and Narratives by Blesswright. Hit that notification bell, because we're not done uncovering the hidden truths behind the mathematics you thought you knew. Share this video with every calculus student you know. Let's spread the truth, even if we can't change the name. Let's make sure that when people learn L'Hopital's rule, they also learn Johann Bernoulli's story, because the mathematics doesn't care whose name we attach to it. The limits evaluate the same way, whether we call it L'Hopital's rule or Bernoulli's rule. The theorems work regardless of who gets credit. But we should care. We have to care. Because if we don't fight for truth in history, we lose truth everywhere. I'm Blesswright, and this has been Numbers and Narratives, where every equation has a story and every story demands justice, even if that justice comes 300 years too late.